Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. It's me.
Sorry.
What's going on over there? It's Sam Abaski and it's Mikey McCubbin.
Hello,
Sam,
hello.
how are you, mate?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Happy to be here. I feel like I ain't done a video with you in ages, bro.
I know, I've been deliberately avoiding you, bud.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't miss me?
Nah, trash opinions. I've been trying to keep on the little burner
You
as you'll see
cannot
today.
talk about trash opinions.
Well,
They've
see
been arguing for the last half an hour while we've been setting up.
We have,
so,
and that will continue onto
yeah.
this show, I think, because there are some meaty topics to get into. Mikey, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, I'm good.
Do you enjoy Doogie's wedding? Have you already spoken about that on this channel?
I loved. I spoke about it briefly with James Wayne on Monday.
Love
Yeah.
that.
Loved
up
it.
Doogie, man.
Great wedding. Doogie and Grace are a lovely couple, two of the best maybe the best couple I know, actually. Just both lovely people.
Oh,
But on top of that, they just threw a great party.
They
It was a
did.
really good party. Sad you weren't there. Rob.
I lived through you, man.
Yeah, it was.
I saw the samba situation.
the Samba Cinderella.
And that was
Sambarella.
beautiful. Still,
You know they both.
My,
They both bought Sambas as a surprise
Joe
for
was
each other.
saying, that is
So
such a
iconic, man.
Doogie thing. It's legendary. Probably wearing Sambas on their flipping
Well,
honeymoon
he has
right
to.
now.
Mate,
He
he's
owns
wearing
no
Sambas
other
on the
trainers.
beach.
He
Yeah.
wears no other
Yeah.
trainers, does he? So that's the only pair of
True.
trainers he's owned for the last 16 years, I think he said, something
Wow.
like that. So we are really cooking now. Anyway, it's time to talk about some football because this week has been plenty of news, isn't there, about managers. Managers coming, managers going. We've seen the news that Thomas Tuchel is officially going to be leaving Bayern Munich at the end of the season. So today we're going to be looking at replacements for some of the top gigs. Liverpool's going to be available. Barcelona's going to be available. Bayern Munich's going to be available. You think Leverkusen's probably going to be available. England might be available. We're going to run through a number of different teams and give our propositions of candidates. First and foremost, let's start with Bayern. I want to get your reaction on the Thomas Tuchel news. Do you think it is sensible to say publicly a manager is leaving at the end of the season when he's in a title race and he is battling on European fronts?
No, probably not.
I don't either.
Probably not. That seems like the logical answer, doesn't it? And more so, it's the fact that on Monday they were saying that they're not even thinking about. They're backing him. Like they'll make a decision at the end of the season, essentially. But it just seems that it just feels like Bayern over the last, I guess, 18 months has become more and more circus-like with the kind of
100%.
the information that gets leaked out to the media about, at the end, by the end of the weekend, it was like, Bayern were officially saying that Tuchel, they weren't thinking about sacking Tuchel, but all the reports were suggesting that it was that they were already trying to line up Xabi Alonso as his replacement. And in some ways, it feels like the Klopp news at Liverpool maybe started, getting. Started reverberating around the club, and there was maybe thinking of like, okay, actually if we are going to line up an ideal successor, then we need to kind of get a move on, because Liverpool clearly have been making an approach for Xabi Alonso as far as we know. It just feels all a bit panic stations at Bayern at the moment, especially after a week in which they lose 3 games in a row in the fashion in which they lose them. Basically, that's not really an excuse. It's definitely not a wise decision, especially with someone like Thomas Tuchel, who, great manager, but can be a difficult character. The players have been so unsettled at that club now for since Nagelsmann was there. It doesn't bode well for the end of the season. It kind of stinks of a club that have almost given up on the season.
Do you think that Tuchel actually makes it? I know they've said we're going to part ways at the end of the season. Do you actually think Tuchel makes it at the end of the season?
I think he makes it, but I think the reason why they announced it at the time that they did was because those 3 losses were probably more damning than like anything that's happened since he's been there. Obviously, they've had losses. They've gone out of cups. They've lost finals. They've had shock results as well. But I think the manner of the losses, but also the energy around the club, is at a point where they're probably seeing.
You think it's going to get better having a manager there that knows he's leaving?
Not better, but naturally, if I'm a player and I know that the manager I don't like is leaving, and I know that the next manager is going to be watching me from this period because they're obviously having those conversations, I'm going to try and put my best foot forward, rather than if I knew that Tuchel's going to be there beyond the summer, I'm just going to be in the same mindset and just play how I'm playing. And I think where they see that there's other big jobs available, they want to almost put themselves in that same market just so they can almost be in that conversation with those managers.
Why not
that
sack
they
him
want
and
to
get an interim? Why not sack him and get an interim?
I don't think there's an interim available that could, because Tuchel's not a dead manager. Like, it's just not worked out at Bayern. Like, and even though
actually, in many respects, Tuchel has made Bayern better than they were last year.
Yeah,
like they were lucky to win the Bundesliga last year. Like, defensively, they were an absolute mess under Nagelsmann. Yes, they had, investment in the way of Kim and Jae and Harry Kane in the summer, and those were two of their problem positions last year. But overall, I think Tuchel has made them a more cohesive attacking unit. He's got some of the best football of Leroy Sané's career out of him when he struggled at points under the previous two managers. So I think we do need to give Tuchel a bit of respect there.
100%. Leverkusen are doing a madness. Like, they're actually unbeaten. They're only unbeaten top side in Europe. Like, you can't, if you look at what Bayern are doing, I saw some stat recently where it said that Tuchel, compared to Pep's seasons at Bayern, at this point, he's got more points than Pep did. And you're thinking about that and you're saying, okay, cool. Normally, if there's a regular season that we've seen Bayern have in previous years, they'll probably be top. But Leverkusen are doing a madness. So you can't... I can understand people being upset about, maybe the players not being too happy with Kimmich, Goretzka, Müller and these man and players that have been there for a long time. But he's not doing as bad as it may seem just because he's saying he's leaving.
He's not doing a good job, though. He's not doing a good job. Like, let's have it right. This Bayern Munich team, as many points as they might have accrued at this stage, there are massive fractures in that dressing room, clearly.
But do you not think that's still a hangover from the from the Nagelsmann
too much
days?
power, man.
I think partly, but then I also think that some of Tuchel's reasoning and explanation behind selections, it hasn't totally made sense to me. The benching and the continued benching of Matthias de Ligt in favour of Eric Dyer at times since coming in doesn't make a massive sense to me. I think some of the treatment of Leon Goretzka in how he's been kind of publicly chastised at times at the club hasn't made a great deal of sense to me. Clearly there's been a large fallout with Joshua Kimmich behind the scenes, who has been a front and centre fantastic player, face of Bayern Munich for sort of the last half a decade. I don't think that's a particularly great look. And look, I think Thomas Tuchel's a fabulous coach. I really do. But I don't think he has improved enough of the players at Bayern Munich since Nagelsmann left to warrant much more time than he's been given, to be honest with you. I'm a little bit surprised that they're going to give him to the end of the season. It has to be said. I think that Thomas Tuchel is a great coach. I think he'll jump straight back into another major job. But I think it's a pretty toxic situation there. If I was a player and I knew that coach was leaving and I didn't get on with that coach, I'd have very little motivation, I think, to perform.
Really? But the season's not completely gone. Like, yes, they're 8 points behind.
It reminds me a little bit of like when Rangnick came to United, and it was kind of like, well, the players know that
they still have a lot to play for.
Coming in the summer, and it's kind of like
they still have a lot to play for. They're 1-0 down in their Champions League tie. They're 8 points behind Leverkusen, who have been almost perfect. They obviously we are not going to expect Leverkusen to just fly until and win the league. They're probably going to have a dip at some point. Yeah. So you're going to want a manager that is capable of handling that pressure. Yes, he's not been able to play the best football, but he's got. We're talking about a Harry Kane that came to Bayern Munich and he's broke most of the records.
But how can you believe in him if he says you're not doing a good enough job? I just go, well, you're leaving anyway, so why do I care what you think?
But these are professionals, though. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's easy to say that, man. I think it's very easy for players to down tools now. Very, very easy.
I don't know.
I think the advantage is that this is a Bayern Munich side which actually, they have had trouble with previous managers, that dressing room, but partly it's because there are still so many experienced players there, like the likes of Kimmich, Müller,
but they don't get on with the manager, do they? But Kimmich openly has had battles with the manager. When he came off at the weekend, he was having an absolute slanging match with the whole of the coaching staff.
But equally, they are the kind of team, and it reminds me a little bit of maybe like older Real Madrid sides where there's enough players in there where they can manage themselves a little bit. Like even if there's discord between the team and the manager, I would still back Bayern in the majority of games between now and the end of the season.
I agree
to be able to manage themselves.
But in the big moments, in the big games, and when things go wrong, I think they're just don't understand how you can have a manager there that players are actively against, half the dressing room doesn't like, and is leaving. So the players that do like him have no real reason to kind of play out of their skin for him because he's leaving anyway, and the players that don't like him, well, he's leaving anyway.
I hear what you're saying, but that's what I was saying earlier. They're actually not doing that bad. Yes, they're not playing the best football, and you'd expect more from Bayern Munich. But when you look on paper and their results, that like they're not.
Things are unraveling though. That's the point, isn't it?
But I don't
quickly.
But some of the results, for example, the game that they lost, their last league game, yeah. If Harry Kane scores that second goal, that whole game is going to be different. Do you know what I mean? And then the narrative's going to be different. It's those small moments when things aren't going in your favour and those go against you. Then the whole narrative changes. But
I think from a Bayern Munich fans' perspective, it's been building to that, hasn't it? It's been building. Although they've been accumulating points, they've not been playing well. Like underneath it all, there have been kind of a litany of issues just slowly bubbling and building up to this point. This is the crescendo, and the answer to it is, well, he's going to leave in 6 months' time. So
and it's indicative not just of Tuchel, of the whole operation at Bayern.
I agree.
This is the most unstable Bayern I've ever been behind the scenes. They didn't get a sporting director in until the deadline day last summer. They failed to sign their number one target in Joao Palhinha. They targeted a number of defensive midfielders last summer, and it didn't work. You look at they could have just got Endo in from Stuttgart. Like, he's done great at Liverpool, hasn't he? Like, they could have got him in on a deal. Like, it just was so uncoordinated. Surprise, surprise, central midfield has been Bayern's weakest area of the field this year. So it's indicative of a club that was so watertight for so many years, was such a strong institution, and over the last 18 months, 2 years have unravelled a bit in terms of those key positions at the top of the club. So they are in transition. Tuchel, I think, is as much a victim of that as he has shot himself in the foot. But shall we get on to possible replacements for him? Yeah,
possible replacements. We're each going to pitch a name. Is that how we want to go? Like, do you want to just run through suggestions?
I feel like maybe run through suggestions, because I think we might have the same names.
Yeah, I think Roberto De Zerbi. It would be an ideal candidate for Bayern Munich here. I really think that Bayern Munich, what they potentially missed in the last 18 months, and for a little while now, actually, I think they've kind of missed a quite a clear identity. They're a little bit muddled in what they're thinking, how they're playing. I think Roberto De Zerbi is ready to step up to a big club fairly soon, and I think by jumping almost now, or like trying to make those moves behind the scenes, if I was Bayern Munich, I would start now, because I think that De Zerbi, Liverpool are going to be interested. I'm pretty sure Barcelona are going to be very interested in him. He's had real issues kind of off the field this season to contend with. I think Chelsea have now taken 11 staff members, haven't they? Players and staff from behind the scenes from Brighton. Sam Jewell, the latest to go this week, the head of recruitment. Obviously, Paul Winstanley's there, Lawrence Stewart's there as well. So the backroom operation's been kind of ripped up a little bit. Little
fun fact, because when I saw Sam Jewell's face on the thing, I was like, he looks very familiar. Yeah. Paul Jewell's son.
Is it?
That. Paul Jewell of Wigan Athletic fame.
I love it. And
a classic mid-2000s
He's had major injury problems, hasn't he, this season? You think of the likes of Solly Marchbank played a minute. Mitoma's been injured at stages. Well, Pedro's injured now. He had the sale of both midfielders in the summer in Caicedo and McAllister. And I'm aware that, Tony Bloom has kind of laid out, and there's been reports this week saying he's really going to try and take it to the next level in the summer. He's going to go after major targets, and I think to a level kind of proved that when he was able to bring in Ansu Fati, that he can go to the big tables and say, we're here to compete for big names. But I just wonder, how far does De Zerbi think he can take this Brighton project? He's got
already seemed frustrated.
Seventh at the moment. I think he's quite a frustrated guy naturally, though. I think he's quite sort of punchy. He's very, very keen to succeed, isn't he? They're 7th at the moment. He's already got on European football. I think they could go pretty deep in the Europa League. We haven't seen this week's result, of course, but they're one of the strongest sides in that competition in terms of coaching and talent level, I think. Liverpool are going to be hard to beat as well as are Leverkusen, but I think they could go deep, Brighton. I wouldn't want to draw them across two legs, Brighton. That's for sure. So if maybe there is just a hint or mumbling that maybe, people are leaving behind the scenes, my players are being sold, maybe I've taken them as far as I can, I would pull the trigger really early on De Zerbi if I was Bayern Munich, because I know that Xabi Alonso is the hot property and the guy right now, but I think there are very similar sort of trademarks across the two sides in how they build up from the back. You look at what Pep Guardiola was saying about De Zerbi not 12 months ago, calling his style of football and how he'd implemented that playing out from the back system the best in the world. They build up really nicely. He's implemented young players. I think that De Zerbi would be amazing for Bayern Munich if they could pull the trigger early enough and get him.
I agree. I think with these jobs that we're going to talk about, there's going to be a few managers that are going to be capable of doing a good job there. Yeah, but I think in terms of the culture and what is needed at Bayern Munich, because remember, we've talked about 2 managers that have come in and haven't really fit what you're expecting from a Bayern Munich, or what the board would expect from a Bayern Munich manager. Yes, the results can be there. Nagelsmann was getting the results. His win ratio was incredible. Tuchel as well, he won the league in the last game of the season. This season's not like, yeah, we're saying football, but results-wise. But I think the reason why I'd say Xabi Alonso is their number 1 pick and is most likely going to go there, and they're going to push for him heavy, is because the fact that he's playing in the league already, that they're already seeing on a week-to-week basis how tactically versatile he is, how young he is as well, and the fact that he can grow and he has played with some of the players that are in that team. Something that they already have in him as well is him knowing what Bayern Munich is about. As an ex-player, he knows what a manager is needed to do there.
But do you think they can get him? Do you honestly think they can get him?
I think so. I think it's probably, we spoke about this off air, yeah. If we're looking at his trajectory as a manager, that is probably the best step that he can take in terms of knowing the league, just being upgraded players and being in a system that he already knows. He's going to go into the Bayern Munich training ground and everywhere, know who he's speaking to, knowing the players already demanding that respect.
He's done it. He's won the Bundesliga.
Yeah, but you can't tell me. And
Let's say he wins it theoretically in the season.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, going to Bayern Munich is a different beast. Like, even Pep Guardiola talked about Bayern Munich being one of the toughest jobs that he's had, because they expect you to win. They expect you to go far in the Champions League. That's a different challenge. You can't say it's the same as playing at Leverkusen where you're the underdogs, because even if they win the league this season, next season...
I would be so shocked, man.
I wouldn't, because I think it makes sense. It makes sense it's a natural career progression. He doesn't have to move too far. He already knows the team. He already knows what they want and what it is to play for them as a player as well. So I think that makes perfect sense.
I think it would be a bit harsh on Leverkusen. If I was a Leverkusen fan and he dipped from us to go to Bayern after taking the title from Bayern Munich for the first time in the club's history, finally kind of eradicating the Leverkusen factor, I would be a bit miffed. Like, I would be sitting there going, this is just ridiculous. I think it would be a real kind of black mark against the Bundesliga as well, that, the 1 year Bayern don't win it, they just go and take the outstanding coach. I think in the same manner it would have been if Klopp had gone there when he won it with Dortmund. I think it would have been pretty disappointing, to be honest with you, from an entertainment perspective. And I just think that once you've won the Bundesliga with Bayern, with Bayer Leverkusen, I almost feel like winning it with Bayern is like, everybody's kind of like... okay, you won it with Bayern. Like, I understand he could go and create a dynasty there, blah, blah, blah. But for me, he's done the Bundesliga. He's completed if he wins it with Leverkusen. I think that Liverpool is a far more attractive proposition to him and for him. I think the squad might even be better set up to a level. Like,
it's certainly more youthful. It's certainly got more... It's certainly got like the next 5 years planned out for it better.
Yeah, I think the fullbacks would be really exciting under a Xabi Alonso system. I think that he would be welcomed and probably given more time at Liverpool. I think Liverpool fans, if things went slightly wrong first season, he would kind of have it's hard to follow Klopp. He's a young manager. If you go to Bayern, I think it's... or get off the toilet, you've got to win that Bundesliga right away. You've got to be competing deep in the Champions League, as Thomas Tuchel's found out, as Julian Nagelsmann, who was in a very, very similar position to Xabi Alonso, by the way, when he went from Leipzig as the outstanding young coach in the Bundesliga, competing for the Bundesliga title, playing the best brand of football in the league, went to Bayern, eaten up, spat out. Yeah. I'm not saying that would happen with Xabi Alonso, but I think Liverpool's a way more exciting option for him.
I completely agree, yeah. But I'm just talking in terms of Bayern Munich. If you're talking about what they need next, they need a figure like Xabi Alonso. They need someone that is going to come in that knows the system, knows the surrounding, knows the board. Players can believe in him. He's tactically versatile. He'll get the best out of different players. He will bring an excitement to the team that not just the fans like, but the players like as well. And I think that's what they've just been missing. Like, obviously,
it is a different Bayern Munich. I mean, he left in 2017. Like, it is a different Bayern Munich to the one that he left.
Different back room,
in terms of the back
everything.
room, in terms of the hierarchy. But I think from a Bayern perspective, I think Xabi is probably still the best fit in that. A big advantage that he played with a few of the players who he would be taking over from, and he would be a bit more on the level of the more senior figures in the dressing room, which I think would solve the dressing room issue, actually, because I think there would be a lot of mutual respect there. Just quickly before we move on, I'll suggest one name who I know you're going to suggest for another club later, but just from kind of hearing your conversations there, I think Simone Inzaghi could be quite a good wild card shout for
So do I.
Bayern.
Fabulous coach.
Just it feels like more so than Xabi, more so than De Zerbi, it feels like the right time in his career, because he did the real hard work at Lazio, where like on a limited budget in difficult circumstances he made them one of the most functional and actually at times one of the most entertaining teams in Italy. Really revived the career of someone like Ciro Immobile, launched the career of a player like Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, revived Lucas Leiva. The amount of success stories at Lazio was a lot, and deservedly got that Inter job in again difficult circumstances, with Conte leaving, with Lukaku leaving, now they are probably among the 3 or 4 best footballing teams in Europe.
Yeah.
By far the best team in Italy now, which, given that they lost out on that title to Milan, like psychologically is a big thing to come back from. Made the
lost out on 2 now to Milan and Napoli, if you think about it.
Yeah,
it's
lost
like
out to Napoli
2
as well,
hammer
of course,
blows
yeah.
mentally.
To come back from that, and also, to make the Champions League final last year, an unfancied side doing that, to beat Milan so comfortably in the semi-final. I just feel like he's got pedigree in multiple competitions now, especially the Champions League thing is a big thing.
Yeah.
And
the Coppa Italia, won it at Lazio, he's won it 2 years on the bounce at Inter. Like you said, I think not enough is made of how attractive they can be playing football as well.
Yeah.
Really,
really attractive. Like
so nice to watch.
The way that Inter, they're so kind of patient, but they're quite, they zip the ball around quickly, but they're really not afraid to just play it onto the wing, then go back to the centre backs, but then zip it in. What he's done with Çalhanoğlu, we've spoken a lot about it the last month, so I won't go into it too much, but that has been remarkable. And yes, the Inter, amid financial constraints, Inter's transfer strategy has been absolutely brilliant. The amount of great free transfers they've got over the last year, it's been, it's just what Juve were doing 10 years ago, essentially. So, he'd have to adapt to Bayern where, things aren't quite as smooth, but I do still think Bayern will be better, and in some ways it will be good to have just a fresh face, a non-German manager, someone who's really bossed another league to come in and give them a little bit of a makeover. And
he's
also,
not talked about enough,
and also he's
100%.
quite safe. It's not like, Inter play really attractive football at the moment, and I back him to do so at Bayern. But he's tactically flexible. He's been good in at 2 clubs which other managers have found hard to manage at. He's been good both in managing players and managing up as well. So I think he's a really solid choice for anyone to be. I could suggest him for a number of teams here, but I think Bayern is potentially the best fit for him in terms of his career.
Do you think that they're all going to end up trying to go for Xabi, aren't they? Bayern.
Yeah, of course.
Bayern's going to try and go for Xabi. Absolutely. My prediction is they miss out into Liverpool, and then they are scrambling.
No, I think they get him. Especially if what
Plettenberg's saying this week, but it's early days though, isn't it? I don't think Xabi makes a decision until
I get you, but you guys need to really understand the psychological thing of already being in Germany and that being a natural. I feel like it's a natural step up. Even as players, if they're playing for Leverkusen, it's not natural because he's going to have to come to a league that is way harder, adapt to a whole. It's just going to be completely different.
He's experienced the league. He knows the area. He's lived there in the past. His family have lived there in the past.
It's just not the same, though. It's just not the same. I genuinely see him going to Bayern.
Should we do Liverpool next? Should we do Liverpool next? Let's do Liverpool next. Where I think Xabi Alonso is definitely going to end up. I would be extremely surprised to see him end up at Bayern. We've already spoken about that, though, and I think he'd be a great fit for this Liverpool system and this Liverpool side. I think when you come through the door as somebody who is following a great or a GOAT in the form of Jurgen Klopp, I think you have to have a number of things going your way and pulling your way to get the fans on side early. You've got to play attractive football, and in an ideal world, you've got to be in some way connected to the club. I think we've seen when managers haven't had a connection to the club or haven't played particularly attractive football that have followed greats, let's say David Moyes and Unai Emery as 2 clear examples. Unai Emery some good results, didn't play great football. David Moyes, not great results, not great football. Neither of them had the foundation and the backing historically to stand on. I think if Xabi Alonso started slowly, he would still have fans on side and support because of what he did as a player at Liverpool. I think that plays a large role,
I disagree.
Man.
I think
Liverpool fans love him.
They do, and I completely understand that. But if they go from, let's say hypothetically, Liverpool win the league, or they win the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup, if they go from that to Xabi Alonso coming in, and it takes him a few months to get going.
Fine.
It's not going to be fine.
Of course it is. Have you seen last season they were barely in the league for a long time of the season. You know what I mean? They were patient enough with Klopp in some really bad moments.
But there's a reason for him. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that caliber of manager coming in. He's not going to come in to just find his feet and take however long it takes.
That's what Klopp did. Klopp came in, found his feet, took a little bit of time.
Look at the team that Klopp had. I'm talking about the team Liverpool currently has.
But it's a transitional team. You have to admit it's a transitional team. And Liverpool fans are prepared
But Klopp has proven, and that's the thing, if they get that DM, Klopp has proven that this squad is able to challenge for the title, challenge in the Carabao Cup, FA Cup, Champions League when they're in it. They're going to be able to do that. So if Xabi Alonso comes in now and he's not able to be in that conversation,
they know that it's going to be a step back next season, even if it's a small step back.
And this is why I think that the manager that they should go for is the person that you said that should go to Bayern Munich. I think De Zerbi would be really good at Liverpool. I mainly say that because football is brilliant. He already knows the Premier League. I feel like he is hungry for that next step up, but also like the next step up of caliber of player. Yes, he's really good at like improving players, and he's proven that he can get youngsters in and make them good, and the Brighton system's working. But I think with the current team that Liverpool have and the type of manager he is, I think Liverpool fans will end up loving him because he's energetic, he speaks his mind in interviews, and that is certain traits that Klopp done that won them over.
Do you want the guy, like, do you want somebody who is basically, on the touchline a little bit Klopp light, like that is really? I feel like
Liverpool fans then the need cult heroes.
So De Zerbi comparisons are very easy. Whereas when you bring in a polar opposite who's very measured, very calm on the touchline, speaks very sort of calmly to the press, I think it's very clearly a step away from what was happening before. When it's the same style, if that style isn't as good as Klopp's, it's so easy to make direct comparisons between the two.
I think this is the problem, and it's not even so much about direct comparisons. I just think that De Zerbi doesn't have. I know he's more experienced. I know he's done a great job in the Premier League. Xabi Alonso, has only had 18 months still in senior management, but I just think De Zerbi will still have way less credit in the bank with the fans. Like all those things that you're describing about Xabi Alonso could quite easily happen with De Zerbi. Like quite easily happen. And if you have De Zerbi, taking a little while to find his feet, taking a little while to implement a system, because let's remember at Brighton, he already had essentially the same back room or the same kind of hierarchical structure as was there when Graham Potter was there, and Graham Potter left them in a brilliant position. Yeah. And like Klopp is leaving Liverpool in a brilliant position, but they're still in more. They don't have a sporting director in yet. There's still more transition behind the scenes, and there has been over the last couple of years. Klopp has had more power there over the last couple of years than he did before that. So De Zerbi would potentially be taking on more responsibility than he's used to. On top of that, if he does take a little while to find his feet in terms of style of play, in terms of results, and he's also getting sent off every month from the dugout, then that kind of bad blood starts to build and confidence evaporates in him. Whereas I think with Xabi Alonso, he can afford for there to be a bit of more teething problems, because you just don't, because he's not going to do that. There's not going to be antics from him at all. You just know that, and he already has an amazing connection with the fans.
100%. I just think it's too soon. I think he's got one more step, and if Bayern Munich is that step before going Liverpool, because remember we've said that Liverpool
they're on a very similar level, man.
No, in terms of steps. But you said Bayern Munich is actually, if we're talking about challenge, Liverpool is a difficult place to go to, bro. Because you're coming to the Premier League, but Bayern, they are the German monster. When you think of Bayern Munich and the Bundesliga, they're always going to be favourites in the league. Liverpool aren't going to be favourites, but you're replacing a man that has become a cult hero, that has accomplished everything there is to accomplish. That is a lot to do after just 18 months of management, bro.
Yeah, I mean that's why I think Xabi Alonso should stay at Leverkusen for one more year and then go to Liverpool. But like that's what in Xabi Alonso's mind, that is what ideally he would do. I reckon Xabi Alonso was looking at Klopp's contract. It's like, okay, he's gone in 2025. That's when a lot
of things could change in 10 months, man. I think it's totally feasible that next season, that squad maybe gets a little bit pillaged in the summer. Leverkusen can't say no to some big offers. There are some players with buyout clauses like Frimpong. He can't quite get the same output and they end up finishing 4th or 5th in the Bundesliga. Does he still get the offers from, the Klopp role will have been filled?
I think
the Barcelona role will have been filled.
Klopp went to Liverpool off the back of a 7th place finish.
But the role won't be available at Liverpool. Somebody would have been in there 12 months and just been
sacked because they couldn't handle it.
Like Barcelona role will have just been taken. The Bayern Munich role will have just been taken. I don't think he'll ever get another opportunity where he'll have 3 of the biggest clubs in the world all after him, because Barca will want him as well. They're not going to get it, but
definitely won't.
Should we talk about them next?
May as well.
I actually don't know where they go. Like, this was the one that I was struggling the most with, because obviously you can bring a suggestion to the table, but then it's like,
can they afford it?
Can they afford it? Will he go there? Like, out of all the top clubs, and it's really sad, to be honest, because in terms of like Spanish clubs, obviously because of the Messi thing, I just loved Barcelona, but I think they have been so poorly run in recent years that I can't see a top manager looking at that prospect and saying, yeah, I'm going to go there head first. And look at the squad as well. Like, I can't, there's nothing that like excites me like the other options.
Really? The rest are very exciting young players. I mean, Lamine Yamal is maybe the best young winger in world football, isn't he?
Yeah.
Pedri, Gavi, Ronald Araujo.
Vitor Roque coming in.
Frankie de Jong in there.
In comparison, and we're already hearing the fact that they're going to have to sell some players if they're going to make any movement in the summer. So I don't know, like if it was just on paper, I would say someone like a De Zerbi again. I think that just for him to take a step up, I think that would be a good place for him to go. But if I was advising any of these men, I wouldn't tell them to go there.
I think it's a tough one, isn't it? Because I think Barcelona fans in particular have a very distinct style of play that they want to operate with that maybe doesn't actually align with the reality of the club at the moment.
I do think maybe
feel like I
feel like they're a bit more amenable now, because it's like with the prospect of Real Madrid just sweeping everything in the next 10 years because of like how well they've been run. I do feel like there's got to be a bit more give among the Barca fans. Like, I feel like that post Pep era of like we have to play the Cruyff style and everything. Like, I think there has to be a bit of a culture shift in the same way that I mean, they still play 4-3-3 and everything, but they had to, when Frank Rijkaard first came in and whatnot, that signalled a culture shift at the club. Like, there has to be something like that, I think. And the problem is, to enact that culture shift, you have to go for one of the punchier targets rather than just going for,
I think it does come,
say an Alguacil at Real Sociedad, who I know like Dougie's very keen on, but you might have to look elsewhere other than La Liga. Yeah,
and I think they're kind of open to doing that, aren't they? Yeah. We've read some reports this week that they are kind of interested in a German coach. We're seeing Hansi Flick's name kind of being banded
Tuchel
around.
Apparently is keen on them.
Of course, Thomas Tuchel's going to be keen on them. He's like going to be looking for a job, isn't he?
Yeah.
And the name I'm just going to suggest here is Julian Nagelsmann. His contract's obviously going to be up with the German Federation at the end of the Euros. Not sure how well he's going to do in there, judging by his results so far, not particularly brilliantly. But either way, I think at Bayern Munich, maybe now when we look back on his time, yes, there were major defensive issues, but maybe they did pull the trigger a little bit early. Maybe now we've seen what happened to Thomas Tuchel. Maybe there were deeper issues behind the scenes and with that squad that Nagelsmann didn't have time to address, because his numbers were still pretty impressive there. We're talking still 70% win rate. He was still in a decent position in the Bundesliga. He wasn't given the opportunity to chase down Dortmund, was he, at the time? 84 games in charge, 60 wins. He's got a history of playing very, very attractive attacking football from his time at Leipzig, and even at Bayern Munich. There was a period where I think they were averaging 4 or 5 goals a game across an 8-game spell at Bayern Munich. He can feasibly still be one of the better coaches in world football, given his age. But I think it comes down to whether or not he would command the respect in the changing room of Bayern Munich when he Barcelona when he walked through the door.
I don't think he can. When you look at what he's doing for Germany currently,
why don't you think he can?
Because like
because it's a young squad, isn't it?
It is a young squad, but I feel like they need, and that's why it's really not upsetting, because obviously I'm not Barcelona fan, but it is to a certain extent seeing Xavi and the fact that he's already feeling like the pressure of being the Barcelona manager, even though he won won the league last year. This season's probably underwhelming a little bit, but he's had injuries to key players. He's had to deal with a few things, and I think that's the type of manager that they need to almost like have.
So a club legend, you think?
Yeah, a cult hero. Not necessarily a club legend, but
Thiago Motta, get him out.
Doesn't exist, does it, for Barca?
But then when you look at what Nagelsmann done at Bayern Munich, we can't really say that win ratio is very different in comparison to other managers that manage at Bayern.
You were talking positively about Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah, and I get that. But then Thomas Tuchel has got what he done at Chelsea, what he done at Dortmund as well. Like, Nagelsmann doesn't necessarily have that. And then if he goes off the back of going to the Euros and Germany don't do what they need to do, knowing that that's going to be our next manager, it's just not exciting. Like, it doesn't fill me with excitement. The issue for them though is,
where is the excitement? Like, they can't physically afford the exciting top dogs. They can't compete for Xabi Alonso. That's the realistic thing here. Like, can they even afford Nagelsmann?
Yeah.
Like, I'm fairly unconvinced. You know, he was on one of the biggest contracts in managerial history when he was at Bayern Munich. I think they're still paying him off to a level. I think maybe there was some sort of agreement reached with the DFB to allow them to take charge there and kind of subsidise some wages. But he was on one of the bigger contracts in European football. Thomas Tuchel was on a massive contract at Bayern Munich. They can't compete with these players. They're going to have to, if they sold Ronald Araujo and Frankie de Jong in the summer. But if that happens, what manager looks at that and goes, well, we just sold Araujo, we just sold Frankie. I think there's just so many problems.
I think
don't know where
Barcelona's the toughest one. Barcelona's by far the toughest one. Like, there's no perfect
Xavi
option.
should just stay.
Like Thomas Tuchel. I mean, a bit late for that now, isn't it? But Thomas Tuchel not only is interested because it's a big job, but he is he's been very public in his praise for the club and based his footballing philosophy at Borussia Dortmund off Pep Guardiola as well, and competed with Pep Guardiola in the Bundesliga, with that style of football. So I think there's something tantalising about Barcelona as an institution for Thomas Tuchel. And actually, kind of going back to our previous point, I do actually think if Liverpool can't land Xabi, then at least as a stopgap, I actually think Tuchel. Maybe it's just the kind of the symmetry in him being a Klopp follow-up to Klopp, because he proved that he could do that at Dortmund, where Klopp was a god, and he wasn't afraid to change up the style of play, especially with a slightly different squad on his hands. Like, he wasn't, he did a remarkable job at Dortmund. I think Tuchel, I think probably it's hard to say, but in some ways, the job that he did at Dortmund over his 2 years was peak Tuchel. I know he got PSG to a Champions League final. I know he won Chelsea the Champions League, but he got those jobs off the back of what was a really remarkable 2-year spell with Dortmund. But as for Barcelona, again, he would be stylistically one of the managers you'd go to. Again, are Barcelona actually capable of getting him? This is the problem. I think he would be. I think he would, first of all, he would be someone who, a bit volatile, but it would be entertaining in that I think he would be more than willing to stand up to the Catalan press. I think he'd be more than willing to take on Laporta if there, I think there'd be tension there, but
that could just be messy, man.
It could be messy, but I think Tuchel. What I'm saying more is that I think Tuchel is thick-skinned enough for a job like that. Whereas I think say if you were to go for bring Rafa Marquez up from the B team, or go for, say, a former player in Thiago Motta who's done a great job at Bologna, and bring him in, I think they would wilt under the pressure. Even someone like Xavi has wilted, even though he knew what it was, from being a player there for so many years. Even Xavi as a club legend has wilted. I feel like someone like Tuchel, and I know things haven't ended well for him at Bayern, but he does he does have that bite to him. Like,
Yeah.
I think
He's
like
a massive personality.
like he would be able to handle it.
And the same thing happened at after PSG. Like everyone was saying,
Yeah.
is he going to be able to hack it, or the press was against him? Then he came to Chelsea and he almost kind of knew that was the narrative around him. So he switched up a little bit, and then obviously by the end of it, it was more with the board. But at the same time,
I feel like
when
they loved it.
Exactly, and I think that Barcelona might be that club for him because he's gone to Bayern Munich, not lived up to the expectations. If he goes to Barcelona, he knows he's not the favourites to win the league or be the best team in that league. But at the same time, he knows, okay, I've got a squad that is building. There's something I can work with here. No one's going to expect too much of me, but they're going to expect a standard that I feel like I can uphold. So I think it would be decent.
Funnily enough, the best candidate is like Mikel Arteta, like by a distance.
just
But it's just never going to happen. He's
happen,
proved that he can kind of regenerate a club from ground zero effectively by dishing out and just hacking out players that don't want to be there, don't need to be there. I think he would be the perfect candidate, but why on earth would he ever want to leave the Arsenal kind of dynasty that he's creating for Barca? I just don't know.
Crazy how things have changed, man.
I know, it's wild, isn't it? Should we do next up Leverkusen? Or
sure.
Just quickly touch on Leverkusen maybe, because obviously they're likely going to be looking for a manager. They will be probably the Bundesliga champions.
Yeah.
Graham Potter,
Leverkusen. Ooh.
Graham Potter.
Really?
Has he been linked there in the past? No.
He needs a job like that. I think.
I know it's Napoli who are looking.
Like it's. I feel like obviously the time at Chelsea didn't work here, but people are kind of forgetting what he did and what he built at Brighton. Like he was playing attractive football. He was getting them in those European positions.
Doesn't speak the language though.
Yeah, but he'd be willing to learn. He would be willing to he's gone everywhere. Like, do you know what I mean? He's a manager that is versatile in that sense, where if he has to learn a language or get someone in that he needs to, that can be that mediator, he'll do that. And I think he needs a job like that will challenge him, and that he can like build his reputation back up with, because for some reason, obviously it might be because he's looking for the perfect role, but he's not. I've not really seen him in like that many conversations.
It's been quiet.
Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think he deserves a shot like that. To be honest,
I think West Ham could be a potential option for Graham Potter. I'm not sure we've even got West Ham down here, but there has been chat, hasn't there, about.
Yeah. Moyes just always survives though, doesn't he? He just always survives.
His contract's up in the summer, David Moyes.
Yeah. That's true. With Leverkusen, I was kind of thinking in terms of, I mean, you just have to look at the club who have not been talked about anywhere near enough in the Bundesliga, because Leverkusen have been flying. But Stuttgart and Sebastian Hoeneß, I think is one of the stories of the season. And I think this is the perfect step up for someone like Sebastian Hoeneß, who hasn't been in management for too long, but has now managed 2 Bundesliga clubs. And what he's done at Stuttgart is actually just ridiculous. This time last year, Stuttgart looked like they were going to get relegated. He took them over in April last year, and they were 18th at the time, bottom of the Bundesliga. They lost one of their final 8 games of the season, and that included draws with Leverkusen and Dortmund, and then beat Hamburg in the relegation playoff, and now they're 3rd in the Bundesliga, in quite a competitive Bundesliga as well. They're ahead of Leipzig and Dortmund. Dortmund not so much, but Leipzig are a serious side, one who are putting up a good fight against Real Madrid in the Champions League last 16. Let's remember, and I just think he plays good football. They're a really organised pressing side. What he's got out of someone like Dennis Undav, who I know had a decent record in the Bundesliga before, but didn't do so well at Brighton. He's got 14 goals in very limited relatively limited minutes. Gerassi 18 goals. And I was kind of having a look at Stuttgart's how they've generally been operating, and since they got promoted in 2020, they've made the biggest profit of anyone in the Bundesliga. Leverkusen in the same amount of time, I think. So they've made an 80 million euro profit. Leverkusen have made a 14 million euro profit despite selling Bailey, Moussa Diaby and Havertz in that time. So they've invested a lot in that squad. Hoeneß took over.
Xhaka and co.
So yeah, Jack, and they spent a decent amount of money on someone like Boniface.
Yeah.
Who else do they like?
Ronaldo wasn't crazy expensive.
Yeah.
But
Oh no, he was for free, wasn't he? But like, yeah, they have done really good business. I'm not saying that Leverkusen have, but just in terms of the comparison of like the kind of squad that Hoeneß has taken over, and a good squad as well. But like last summer they sold, was it Wataru Endo? They sold Borna Sosa. And I'm forgetting the third. Oh, Mavropanos, of course. They sold Mavropanos, like 3 of their key players from a club that nearly got relegated, and now they're 3rd in the league.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think it's hard to look past like just how remarkable a job he's done there. And I know, like, you know, Sven Mislintat did a good job originally there, bringing them up from the Zweite Bundesliga. But like, given the resources that he's had at his disposal, the fact that Stuttgart have actually created more XG than Leverkusen this season is ridiculous. Like, it is ridiculous. So I think he is due a step up for sure, whether that be this summer or next summer. But like, you know, he's Uli Hoeneß's nephew, like former Bayern president's nephew. I mean, like, it wouldn't completely shock me if Bayern, if they miss out on Xabi, if they miss out on maybe a secondary target, if they're like, you know what, let's give Hoeneß a chance. Like I wouldn't be overly surprised.
Keep it in the family.
Other options I've got down here is, like, I guess, like Marco Rosa. You can never write him off getting another kind of big Bundesliga job if he wants to leave Leipzig. Do you know Top Muller's doing a really good job at Eintracht Frankfurt. I know it's a bit boring just suggesting other Bundesliga managers for Leverkusen, but I feel like that's probably where they'll go to.
I agree.
Unless they do go a bit maverick and, like, you know what, someone like Graham Potter, we want him in. But that would be my shout.
I think Hoeneß is a really good shout. I feel outside shout from me, maybe somebody like a Thomas Frank, who has, you know, proven that he can take a team up from lower levels and sustain them at a high level. You know, you think of what he's been able to do at that Brentford side. I also think of him like, how much further can he take Brentford to a level? Like, Tony's probably going to leave in the summer. You think, well, definitely going to leave, judging by recent quotes. I think maybe this might be the summer that Thomas Frank gets an approach from a fairly significant side, and I think Leverkusen would be a notable step up from Brentford in nearly every capacity. And, you know, he has all of the tools, I think, in terms of data, in terms of analytics, in terms of his tactical layout and how adaptable he is with sides. We've seen him change the functionality of that Brentford side 2 or 3 times, both from coming up to the Championship. How they played in the Championship was totally different to how they played in the Premier League. How they played with Tony was totally different to how they played without Tony. It's worked on nearly every occasion. He's got a really good backroom staff with him. I think probably that would be a nice step up for a manager like Thomas Frank, Leverkusen. So I don't think it's a horrible shout, but whether or not that comes to fruition. Obviously saw reports this week as well that the Brentford owner is looking to sell a majority stake in the club, so might that play into his thinking
so.
a little bit?
I think if there's any time for Thomas Frank, I think if there was any reason why Thomas Frank would leave Brentford in the next year, I think that would be the reason.
So I think Thomas Frank is an outside shout. I think it'd be a big step up, but it'd be an outside shout, I think.
Should we rattle through?
Let's rattle through a few. Should we just quickly do West Ham? So we totally forgot, but Moyes' contract is out, and, you know, with the Moyes out banners are in the crowd. You going to say Graham Potter again?
I think so. I think Graham Potter. I can't really think of anyone that is.
I think Julian Lopetegui isn't a terrible shout here. I think maybe. I know the reasons he left Nottingham Forest were largely off the field, and kind of since Gary O'Neill has come in, he's disproven quite a few of those. You know,
even Gary
O'Neill.
But Gary O'Neill, I think he's got a pretty settled position right now at Wolves. I think he'll be given the keys to that kingdom in the summer if he continues on the trajectory.
Is West Ham a step up though?
Yeah, I think maybe, but I think West Ham themselves are thinking they're going to be extremely punchy. You know, we've seen their recruitment be extremely punchy, going out and getting players like Kudus, going out there and getting Paqueta. I think they are going to think to themselves, we should be competing for major names here. And like I saw reports midweek that they going to put themselves out there for Thomas Tuchel, and like, I'm not saying that they're going to get Thomas Tuchel, because I don't think that's ever going to happen, but if that's the sort of level of candidate they're considering behind the scenes, I'm not totally sure I could see Gary O'Neill leaving after 12 months in that position. I think it'd be a weird decision from nearly every party involved.
I hear you. I just think it depends on if West Ham are able to keep Paqueta, and he's probably their best player right now. Bowen's obviously tied down to a new contract, but I think them losing Paqueta in the summer would show not where they're going, because obviously they're going to try and replace him and things. And
they replaced Rice well.
They did, but I think it'll
Replace
just
Bryce
be different.
brilliantly.
I think it'll just be different. If you lose your best player every window, it says like obviously you as a club you can wanna improve and get better and still playing European football, but I think they'll struggle to get a top manager when they're losing their best players.
But they also kind of have already softened the blow of a Paqueta departure with the signing of Kudus last summer, right? Like they are quite good at regenerating in that sense ahead of time, which is not what we saw from West Ham say 5 years ago, where they were all over the shop in that sense. Like I think I think it is a good club to go to in that sense.
I think they would have been very interested in Oli Glasner had Palace not pulled the trigger earlier there as well.
Shout.
So I
He's
think
only got a 2-year contract though. Is it only 2 years?
I think that's fairly standard though for managers, isn't it?
But that's why I think maybe somewhere on the continent. I mean, I've suggested them for other clubs, but while we're on the subject, someone like Vincenzo Italiano at Fiorentina, who's done like a really remarkable job there, did a great job at Spezia before.
Are you suggesting him for Napoli?
I will. Yeah, I am suggesting him. I have suggested him for Napoli, but I don't think West Ham. Like, I think he would be definitely someone West Ham should look at. Someone like Bruno Genesio, who I've actually a bit of a wild card shout for a team that we might not even get onto, to be honest. But Bruno Genesio, he's been out of work since leaving Rennes in November, was it, or December? Like, great track record at Lyon, great track record at Rennes as well. Like, great working with young players. Like, plays really exciting attacking football. Like, is used to getting, I know it's the Premier League's a different level, but is used to getting sides playing, bigger than themselves and, getting sides into European contention. So those would probably be my shouts off the top of my head. They're both quite, especially Genesio's like pretty experienced as well, like managed in China too. So like, I would go for something like that actually. I think West Ham should be looking on the continent.
Like I've just been saying it recently, but I think David Moyes is slightly disrespected though. Like, I feel like obviously West Ham feel like they want to make that step up, but they've sacked him before, and we saw what happened with that. Like you, obviously, I can understand the football might not be great, but we're forgetting the period that they had. I think it was the end of December or going into January.
I agree, but I always have a concern with non-fans of that club saying about those fans should. No, but I always think West Ham fans, the guys sitting there and watching the football 90 minutes every week. If they say it isn't good enough, it probably isn't good enough.
I completely understand.
I do feel like West Ham fans have a tendency to do that with most managers.
I think it's split. I think it's 50-50. I've seen fans that are Moyes in, seen fans that are Moyes out. But I've always been of the ilk that if you win games, it doesn't matter how you win it. Like I'd rather.
He hasn't won an 8.
I do.
He's still in the top 8. He's 8th, right?
But I do think the one
they're
thing
still in Europe. Do you know what I mean? Like how far?
But it depends where. But I think that's the choice, isn't it? And I think this is where I do sympathise with West Ham fans. It's like David Moyes. If West Ham want to stay where they are for the next 3 years, I would back Moyes to more or less do that. I would back Moyes to get West Ham finishing in the top half, like for the next 3 years. Like at least if their recruitment remains as decent as it has been. But if you want West Ham to actually go to the next level, if you want West Ham to actually be a bit more like punchy like Brighton have been in terms of actually last season Brighton were actually in the top 4 race for like a lot of last season, then I think you maybe do need someone who's got a little bit more about them in terms of playing style, and also it is like you want to see a team play more attacking football. That's also a fair enough argument. And also I think, to be honest, I think with West Ham fans, I think they're just a bit bored. Like Moyes has been there for Moyes has been there for quite a long time, and when you've been I can't remember the last time West Ham were truly battling relegation or whatever. Like at this point, they're a mid-table club, but they want more. They're in a big stadium. Like they want to have they want to be punching hard than the well, I guess they are in the Europa League this season, but. I would if that's what West Ham's ambitions are, and that's what that's where they're looking. Then I would look outside of the Premier League.
Let's quickly touch on Napoli then, because it has been a tumultuous season, really, hasn't it? Obviously, Rudy Garcia being sacked. They have now appointed, I think, Francesco Calzone, haven't they? Yeah. What's going to happen there? I don't know. I mean, it's De Laurentiis we're talking about here, isn't it? So literally, he might last 2 days. We don't know at this stage. We don't know how successful he's going to be. He's there on an interim basis, but De De Laurentiis might well just throw a 6-year contract at him if it does well. Equally, he might last a week. So should we suggest you're going to stick with Vincenzo Italiano there?
Yeah, I think so. I think he is he's the kind of, not sure who I'd compare him to, but I guess in some ways, like the next big thing in Italian football. Did a great job at Spezia, has done a brilliant job at Fiorentina, led them to 7th in his first season, 8th in his second, similar points tallies. And in the 3 seasons before he was there, they were finishing, consistently in the bottom half on pretty low points tallies. Had to deal with Vlahovic, who was in the form of his life, leaving halfway through his first season. Chiesa had left the year before he joined. Artur Cabral scored 17 goals for them last year. He went to Benfica in the summer. The replacements that he got in, Beltran from River Plate and Nzola from Spezia, they haven't really hit the ground running, and yet they're still 7th in a really competitive. That 3rd to 8th in Serie A, I think is probably more competitive than that kind of level in the table than any other league in Europe's top 5 leagues. So to stay in 7th, despite, there was decent investment in the summer, but there's still been a lot of transitioning in the time that he's there in terms of playing staff, is brilliant. And they're only 7 points off Champions League football. Given if they go on a 2-month run, they could well be in contention for Champions League football, and also great in the cups as well. And I think that is definitely something that should be taken into account, because that's exactly the kind of club that live on cup runs like that, especially when they've been so up and down in the league over the last few years. Reached the Coppa Italia final last year, of course, reached the Conference League final as well, reached the Coppa Italia semis in his first year at Fiorentina. He's back in the semis this year. They breezed their Conference League group this year as well, so they're into the last 16 there. So I think he would be the outstanding candidate there. I think otherwise you're looking at someone maybe like Thiago Motta, or dare I say it, trying to bring Sarri back in. Probably,
I was going to suggest Thiago Motta, but I do think that he's obviously had that friction in the past, hasn't he, with De Laurentiis? Was he approached and kind of rejected?
He was approached, yeah. They were basically they basically just said, he wasn't happy with basically their plans for the summer.
Strategy, and that wasn't particularly strong. And Antonio Conte's name is still kind of floating around Italian football. I just don't see that happening. I imagine him versus De Laurentiis would be,
it'd be great to watch.
It'd be good to watch, but it would be the clash of it'd be the biggest clash. I think Antonio Conte, in terms of Italian coaches on the market that you think of, that would have an immediate impact at Napoli, I think would be that guy. But it would be such a gear change from the football we've seen Napoli play, maybe not this season, but last season in particular. When you think of the best of Napoli with Kvicha and Osimhen kind of flying forward and playing at pace with a very, very high line, it would be... it would be a polar opposite. But then I don't think it would
be that bad.
It'd be so fun to watch. It'd be so entertaining to watch Conte go to Napoli.
Yeah, and I think.
But equally, where are the the first thing I think of is wing backs, and it's Napoli haven't really operated with wing backs ever.
That's right, because Conte get in the black book and he'll just go, right, which old ex-Premier League player can I bring in?
Where's Victor Moses?
It'll probably work in Syria. But I want to see Conte. I want to see Conte back in Syria. And I think if you're looking at the teams that are going to be looking for managers,
Roma.
I think that
I
think this would be a good fit for him. I think he would just be able to get not the best out of him, because we've seen what the Kvaratskhelia and Victor Osimhen can do as well, yeah. But the fact that he gives those players that freedom, and all he really needs to sort out is the defense. That's what he loves to do. Hazard spoke about it. It was probably the best.
But he wants his say over transfers, doesn't he, Antonio Conte? He wants to have largely
he'll be understanding. He'll have to be understanding.
There's nothing understanding about Conte. He's never been at a club and been understanding of any sort of transfer or recruitment strategy that's not his own. He goes into a club and he says, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to get. De Laurentiis is a guy who goes, this is what I want and this is what you're going to get. Those two, I think there's serious... There'll be thunder and lightning if those two were in a room sat together trying to come up with a coherent recruitment strategy for Napoli. It's an emotional football club at the best of times, and Conte's the most emotional manager in world football, I think.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to watch though.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to watch. England. Let's do some quick fire ones, shall we?
England.
Jose Mourinho.
For one tournament, I would love to see
Mourinho.
what Mourinho does with England. For one tournament.
I just want to see it. I just want to see it.
It would only be a one tournament thing. I think, you know what I would love is if the next England, if Gareth Southgate's successor, like if it all goes tits up and it's, you know, like with Capello before, what was it, Euro 2012, and it's like, oh, we've got 2 months, we need someone to come in. I would be like, Mourinho, get him in. Like, but I just think we need. To be honest, I think basically more of the same. I'd like Gareth Southgate has, I think, been remarkable. I know he's got a great squad, but he didn't start out with a great squad, and he rebuilt the culture there. And I think that culture is really in keeping with. I think it's really in keeping with Graham Potter's managerial style. I know he's a club manager, but. Like, I think Graham Potter stylistically is a step up on Gareth Southgate, and I think man management wise, I think Graham Potter is everything. Like he's so like Gareth Southgate. I think when you look at what he did with Östersunds, look at what he did with Brighton. Like, he's a bit out of the box. He's not conventional in terms of the way that he gets his team to bond.
Can he get them over the line though? I'm talking about getting over the line. The only person that I see doing that is Jose, bro. Like, if there's a one-off, if there's one-off games,
I'll throw a third name into the mix. I think Steve Cooper would be a decent shout.
But what has he got over someone like Graham Potter?
Well, he's got. Really? I think it does play a large role that he's worked with quite a few of these players before. Let's not forget the successes he had taking England to an under-17 Euros final and losing, but then winning the World Cup final, then this following year going to another semi-final. Like, he's worked with a lot of that under-17 side that have then gone on to become very solid players at first-team international level now. So he's used to some of the players. I think he's used to the FA setup. I think he was in charge of the out-of-possession strategy that Gareth Southgate implemented largely at the 2018 World Cup as well. So I think there has been some level of crossover between age groups, which I think England DNA kind of oversaw, where, you know, the first team plays very similar football to the 21s, to the 18s, to the 17s. So he's to some level used to that sort of structure and the hierarchy at the FA, and I think there is something to be said for internal appointments that have long-term planning. You look at how Gareth Southgate was with the 21s, basically stepped up to the first team because of the England DNA. He'd been working at that level when he just stepped up. I think Steve Cooper, much success at the 17s, proven track record of winning international silverware with a younger age group. Can he just step up? I think he did a remarkable job when he went to Swansea. Even more remarkable job when he went to Nottingham Forest to take them from bottom of the Championship to the same season getting promoted. I understand it fell apart, but I also think to a level, some of the off-the-field problems at Nottingham Forest, signing 30-odd players, didn't necessarily play to his style of management, which is improving, which is getting a really, really happy environment where his man management skills with young players can thrive, and that might well be the England setup where he's worked with a lot of these players in the past and has existing relationships. I don't think it's a terrible shout, Steve Cooper.
No, I think that's a good shout. I think it's a good shout. I'm just talking about those last few games. We are proven to have one of the best squads in the world. Yeah. We need someone that can win those. Honestly,
France.
We need someone to.
It's not far off.
It's not. Yeah, it's not far off.
And it's stronger in some areas.
Semi-finals, finals. I need someone that knows how to win those games, bro. That just gets everyone up for it. Like Steve Cooper, I think I get those like Steve Cooper, the Graham Potters, like these men. I think they could do something similar to Gareth Southgate. Yeah. But if we're talking about England winning these trophies. Yeah, shout Jose, man.
I think it's kind of it's one or two things, isn't it? Like sure, Jose, I would probably back to manage like an individual semi-final better than either of those two managers. But it's getting there in the first place. It's like it's making sure that the team doesn't implode in some way before that.
You don't have to do too much, though. That's what I'm saying. International football, you don't have to do too much, and that's why I think he would even be successful because he's obviously beyond like the modern day football and what it requires. Yeah, from managers but in terms of tournament football. I think he'll be able to, because the squad is there, like quality in every position. You're not going to ask too much tactically. We're not going to ask you to be playing this type of football. Nah, just win the game. Just win the game. Make them believe that they can win it.
What side of the fence do you come down on? I mean, should we wrap it up there? Do you want to do?
Well.
I think we should wrap it up there. Yeah. We were going to do Man United and Chelsea, but who really cares? And at the moment, Eric Ten Hag and Pochettino
keep them in, man.
Feet firmly under the table. It's the Carabao Cup final today as well, wasn't it?
3 wins, yeah.
So how are you feeling, mate? Do you want to get a quick prediction before we head out?
Okay, yeah. I'll go. I'm hoping for a 2-1 Chelsea. I feel like if we score first, I'm hoping we win. If they score first, I think they win. I don't think that them having their injuries is going to set them back that much, because the players to come in are still quality, and Jurgen Klopp can get the best out of anyone. So still having them as the favourites, even though everyone wants them not to be.
I'm going to go Liverpool 3-1.
I'm going to go pens again. Happened
Pens
the last
again,
two finals between them. I think it might happen one more time. But that's it for
And
today's
who's going to
episode.
win on the pens though?
Oh, sorry, Liverpool. That's it for today's
Joke,
episode
man.
of Sunday Vibe. If you did enjoy it, please do subscribe to the channel. Thanks to Sam. Thanks to Mikey. Thanks to you guys at home for watching. We'll see you later. Goodbye.